Pray with me, please. Most holy God, on this beautiful summer's evening, we thank you that you have brought us here. And we ask for a touch from you. We ask that you touch our hearts, our minds, that you stir in our spirits, that you meet us here in this place, and that you anoint us afresh as your people. That your grace may fall upon us. That your peace might reside within us, so that we may be quieted in the depths of our spirits to listen to you speak your word. I give you my mouth and my heart. We give you ourselves in this place and ask for your blessing. Jesus, in your holy name. Amen. I don't know if you heard, but apparently they're building a new big wheel in London. It's going to be on the South Bank, not far from the one that's already there. But this one is going to be themed. So this one, instead of just being the British Airways one, is going to be a Mary Poppins theme. They're going to call it the London-Lie. And there was a point to that, so I'll come back to it. Do you? Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in Jesus? And I don't just mean that there was a historical person. I mean, do you believe that he was the Son of God? Do you believe that he is the light of God? Do you believe that he is the Redeemer and the Saviour? If you think no, then actually I don't blame you, because I think sometimes the way the church teaches about Jesus doesn't really do us many favours, because quite often the person that's portrayed, and I'm being guilty of this myself, the person that is portrayed is more like Mary Poppins than the person that we read of in the Gospels, is more like some kind of old English prim and proper nanny than a first century rabbi, is more like the helper and doer, the perfectionist that comes in, the super nanny, than Son of God. And I think the reason for that is because we tend to think of Jesus as somebody who's there in the background, always looking out for us and watching out for us, making sure that everything's okay. And whilst life is okay, that's fine. But when things go pear-shaped and suddenly we feel like we're on our own, then if we think of Jesus as the super nanny, then suddenly we feel let down and our faith takes a real knock. Because sometimes I think, when we think of Jesus, we think more of somebody who kind of comes down from the clouds. You know, I have a vision of Mary Poppins with the umbrella. Somebody who looks all prim and proper, rather than somebody who lived in first century Palestine and was one of the people. I think sometimes we think of somebody who fixes all the problems. So somebody who will come in and say, yes, Dad spends too much time at work, and Mum's too involved with her projects, and the kids don't know how to use their imagination, so I'll come in and I'll fix all this. I'll make sure that the relationship between Mum and Dad gets better, and that Dad realises that the kids are precious, and I'll do all of this and sort all of this mess out and bring it to a great happy resolution because I'm kind of super nanny. And sometimes I think that's the way that we see Jesus. And when we do that, I don't think we do him or ourselves any favours. In our gospel reading, it's a lovely story about Jesus on the boat with the disciples. Now, most of his ministry is around Galilee. So they're on the water quite a lot. One, because he's visiting all the towns and villages in Galilee, and they are the towns and villages that are around the Sea of Galilee. They are in the small harbours and villages and fishing villages, and they're the places that he's mostly visiting. So it makes sense to go by boat. Secondly, most of the guys that have followed him so far have been fishermen, so they have boats, and they know how to sail. So, of course, another good reason to take boats. So they're out on the water, and Jesus is absolutely dog-tired. So he goes to the stern of the boat, and at the stern of the boat, there's a small place, a couple of doors, and if you've seen them in the small fishing boats, and you can kind of get underneath, and you can get one or two people down there to sleep. And it's really handy, because if you end up in another port, or you end up somewhere becalmed, then you have somewhere to be out of the sun or out of the weather. And if you're in a different port, then you've got somewhere to sleep and keep an eye on the boat at the same time. So anyway, Jesus is there, and he's in the stern of the boat, and he's dog-tired, so he's fast asleep. The weather in Palestine can change like that. I mean, the weather here can change really quickly, but nothing like the weather in Palestine. 1 minute you can be on the sea and it's all nice and calm, and the next minute everything's rough and you've got a storm. And this is exactly what happens. So the storm comes in, and after a while the guys realize they're in trouble. So they drop the sails, which is what you do, and they take to the oars. Not so much to try and get somewhere, but just to make sure that you survive the storm, that you have some positioning for the boat so that you're able to survive the wind and the rain and the waves. And eventually, one of them knocks on the door, opens it up. Jesus is still fast asleep in there. And the guy says, "Jesus, do you not realize we're dying here? We're just about to drown. And you're just lying there asleep. Do you not care?" Jesus gets up. He stands up, puts his hand up and says, "Peace. Be still." And suddenly the wind drops and the waves stop and everything's calm. And he goes back to the stern of the boat. And I assume he goes back to sleep. And the disciples are like, "Wow, who is this person that can control the wind and the waves?" The thing is, I don't think that's the lesson that Jesus is trying to teach them. He's not trying to teach them that he's this person of amazing power. For a couple of reasons. Firstly, had he been this person of amazing power, then as soon as the storm started, he would have come out and said, "You know what? I can handle this, lads. Don't worry. Stop." The storm would have stopped and they would have gone, "Wow, look at that." So he didn't need to wait until the boat was being swamped. He didn't need to wait that long. Secondly, the disciples could have gone and got him at any point. In fact, had they not thought that he was Super Nanny, because Super Nanny's the person that you expect to watch over you, and you don't need to say, "Help." You don't need to say, "Can you help me with this? This is what's going on." You expect them to be watching you. You expect them to know what's going on, and you expect them to stand in whenever you think they should stand in. That's kind of what you expect from Super Nanny. And that's what they're expecting from Jesus. If they had thought that he was the rabbi, then when the storm started, they would have knocked on the door and said, "Jesus, we've got a storm starting. We need all hands on deck. Can you come give us a hand, please?" I mean, the sailors, this is what you do. As soon as there's a storm, you get all hands on deck and everybody helps out. But they don't do that because they're expecting Jesus to sort everything out without them going to him and saying anything or doing anything. They have this expectation around Jesus and who he is and what he should do. Interestingly, a few days later, the unimaginable happens, and John the Baptist is killed by Herod. You know the story, don't you? That Herod has a party, and Salome, his wife's daughter, is she called Salome? Is the wife called Salome? I think the wife's called Salome, and the daughter's dancing, and the mother asks for the head of John the Baptist. So he kills John the Baptist, And of course, news gets back to Jesus and the disciples, and they are understandably distraught. First of all, Jesus knows John well. They were cousins, so they grew up together. And John was the one that baptized Jesus. Secondly, most of the followers that were with Jesus were originally with John the Baptist. They were his followers. And they moved from John to following Jesus. So they all knew him really well. So Jesus says, look, we've got this news. Let's go off somewhere quiet. Let's just spend some time by ourselves. So they decide to go to this little quiet place that they know. And they go down to the boat, and they get in the boat, and they start to sail away. Unfortunately, some of the folks in the town have overheard the conversation, and they know where they're going. So it says that they ran ahead of them and met them there. So when Jesus and the disciples pull into this little cove, this quiet little area that they think is just going to be for them and nobody else, it's packed with people. I mean, just thousands of people. So of course the disciples look at Jesus, and Jesus says, look, we've got to help them. And he says, you know, they look like sheep without a shepherd. So he starts teaching them. The day gets late, and the disciples turn to Jesus and say, Lord, it's getting really late. You need to send them away so that they can get something to eat. Send them away so they can go into the local towns and villages and they can get something to eat. Mark chapter 6. And Jesus turns round to them and he says, anyone know what Jesus says? He says, you give them something to eat. You do it. And they said to him, are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it them to eat? 200 denarii is about a year's wages, so it's a lot of money. I mean, basically they're saying, what are we supposed to do? Get all the money we've got, presuming they've got that much money, go to the villagers, buy all this bread, come back and feed it. I mean, you know, what do you expect us to do, really? And he said to them, how many loaves have you got? Go and see. And when they found out, they said, we've got 5 and 2 fish. And he ordered them to get all the people to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. And taking 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed them. And he broke the loaves and he gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And all ate and were filled. And they took up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of the fish. Those that had eaten the loaves numbered 5,000 men. Now, I don't know if there were just 5,000 men there, because it was only men that legged it there, or there were a lot more people there, and they only counted the men. I mean, what for central Palestine, you know. Why did Jesus say, you do it? Why did Jesus turn to the disciples and say, you feed them? It says immediately he got his disciples into the boat to go ahead to the other side to Bethsaida whilst he dismissed the crowd. And after saying farewell to them, he went upon the mountain to pray. So he sends the disciples off to Bethsaida and says, I'll meet you there. I'm going to dismiss the crowd and just spend some time on my own. When evening came, the boat was out at sea and he was alone on the land. When he saw that they were straining at the oars against an adverse wind, he came towards them early in the morning, walking on the sea. He intended to pass them by. Why? Why did he intend to pass them by? Well, there's a couple of explanations. One of my favourites is that actually he's just really annoyed with them. That he's been trying to teach them a lesson for days and days and days, and they haven't got it. And he's thought, you know what? Sod them. Let them sink. I don't care. I've had it up to here. Now, I don't think that's the reason why. But I really do like that explanation because it makes him so human. And that, I think, is really helpful. Actually, the reason is the same reason why he said to them, you feed them. And it's the same reason why he remained in the stern of the boat, ostensibly asleep, whilst the boat was in the middle of a storm. Because it says, they all saw him and were terrified, but immediately he spoke to them and said, take heart, it's I, do not be afraid. And when he got into the boat with them, the wind ceased, and they were utterly astounded. For they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. They did not understand about the loaves. They didn't understand why Jesus had said, you feed them. They didn't understand why Jesus hadn't just calmed the storm when it first started. They didn't understand. He's trying to teach them a really basic lesson here, and they're not getting it. It says a little bit further that they get into the boat again to go off somewhere else, and it says the disciples had forgotten to bring any bread, and they only had one loaf with them in the boat. This is Mark 8:14, just in case you want the reference. And Jesus cautioned them, saying, watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and the yeast of Herod. And they said to one another, it's because we didn't bring any bread. And becoming aware of it, Jesus said to them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes and fail to see? Do you have ears and fail to hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many basketful of broken pieces were there? And they said, 12. And he says, the 7 for the 4,000, how many baskets of broken pieces did you collect? And they said to him, 7. And he said to them, do you still not understand? Do you still not understand? What's the lesson that Jesus is teaching the disciples? And why don't they get it? Because I can tell you, they don't get it. In fact, they don't get it until Jesus has been crucified, died, and has risen again. Later on, they get it. But all the way through his life, they don't get it. What's the lesson? A few years ago, I went to do a wedding. It was a friend of mine. We were doing some advocacy work together, and her daughter was getting married. Lois's daughter, Tiffany, was getting married, and they were getting married on the other side of the mountain to where we lived. So it was about 25, 30 miles on the other side of the mountain. And I went on the Friday to do the wedding rehearsal. And it was at this little kind of wedding venue. It was an old Civil War house that had been converted into like a small hotel and wedding venue. And it was gorgeous. And when I went outside to the patio where we were holding the wedding, all the little hills around were all completely manicured. I mean, just absolutely spotless. In fact, I could have sworn if I'd stood there long enough, Tinky Winky would have come over the top of the hill, because it looked like Teletubby land. I kid you not. Seriously, that's exactly what it looked like. So I went to the rehearsal on Friday night. Everything went great. It took me 45 minutes to get there. So I knew the following day, Saturday, it wouldn't take me as long, because obviously I'd gone there at 6 o'clock on a Friday, so I'd have, Friday night traffic. So I thought, well, it's probably going to take me half an hour to get there, but you know what? Just in case, I'll leave an hour and a half. And then if I get there early, I can just have a cup of tea, just sit down, just enjoy the surroundings and relax until everything gets started. So I set off on the Saturday. Wedding's at 6, and I set off at 4:30. 20 to 5, I hit Interstate 70, which is the one that goes over the mountain. And you drive for a couple of miles along this kind of straight stretch before you hit the bottom of the mountain. And you go past a little place called Boonesborough. You heard of Boonesborough? Yeah. That's right. And interestingly, my mother knew of Boonesborough. I'm like, how do you know of Boonesborough? And apparently what had happened was, do you remember a number of years ago when there was all that problem because the Americans were torturing people in Guantanamo Bay? Do you remember? Well, for some reason, the BBC went to Boonesborough, of all places, Boonesborough, to interview the chief of police and a local artist. And the local artist was this wonderful lesbian woman who's just a beautiful artist. And they sat down with her and said, what do you think about the torture? And she said, oh, it's dreadful, we shouldn't do it, it's inhumane, we know better, blah, blah, blah. And they went to the chief of police, and the chief of police said, nah, these other nations, they're only getting all upset because we have the guts to do what they don't want to do. That was it. That's Boonesborough. But anyway, that's another story. So I go past the Boonesborough exit. The next exit isn't for like 8 or 9 miles the other side of the mountain, because you have to go right over the top and down the other side before you get to the next exit. And I'd literally gone past maybe a quarter of a mile when all the traffic just stopped. And it was just dead. And I think it was like 4:45 when this happened. And I wasn't worried because, you know, I'd left so much time, and this is exactly why I'd left so much time, just in case, because, you know, the thought of being late for a wedding is a pastor's nightmare, you know. Funerals and weddings, the two things you'd never want to be late for. So I'm sat there, but half an hour later, at 5:15, I've moved maybe a half a mile, and I'm still not even halfway up the mountain. 5:30, I've still not reached the top of the mountain. 5:45, I've still not reached the top of the mountain, and I know it's at least a half an hour from there, even if I put my foot down. So I know that the wedding's at 6, I am late. And funny enough, about 5 o'clock, I'd started praying, you know, like you do. And I'd started with the Serenity Prayer. You know the Serenity Prayer? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. By 5:45, I was down to God! That was all. So I was in this absolute panic, had no idea what to do. I'd managed to get hold of the place where the wedding was being held. I'd left a message with the receptionist for the father of the bride just to say, please explain, I'm stuck in traffic, there's nothing I can do, you know, here's my phone number. And I was so desperate, I phoned one of the deacons at the church, David, and I phoned him and said, look, I'm in a real pickle here. I'm not even to the top of the mountain. I've got this wedding on the other side of Frederick County. It's supposed to be at 6 o'clock. I'm already late. I'm in a real panic. Would you please just pray? And he said, sure. He said, I'll call the other deacons. And I'm like, great. So I called Elaine, and he called the other ones. And so there was maybe 7 or 8 people. That fortunately, everyone was contactable. And within 2 or 3 minutes, everyone had been contacted to pray. Suddenly, the car in front of me moved. We reached the top of the mountain. I went over the top of the mountain, and suddenly there was no traffic. There was absolutely nothing. I mean, it was literally as if somebody had just gone dum-dum and taken a whole load of cars out. I mean, seriously, the whole thing just evaporated. And I legged it to this wedding venue, and when I got there, I got out of the car, and I'm already sort of huffing and panting, and I'm red, because I'm thinking, oh gosh, they're going to be waiting for me. And I got out of the car, and the father of the bride, I can't remember his name, came over and said, she's not ready yet. Don't worry. They're having a problem with something, so don't worry, it's going to be a little bit late. So just take your time, just relax, calm down, and it's going to be fine. And it was fine. It was a lovely wedding. Afterwards, I'm driving home, and I'm like, so I'm praying on the big emotional phone to God for help because I'm stuck in this situation. And I'm praying my biggest, hardest prayer, if there's such a thing, for an hour, and nothing happens. Nothing. And then I called the deacons and asked them to pray, and within a couple of minutes, poof, everything happens. Why? Why? The problem with the disciples was that they were looking at Jesus and they were thinking, I couldn't be like that. I mean, he's super nanny. He's extraordinary. He can do amazing things, miracles and magic and miracles. You know, I mean, he can do extraordinary things. He's the Son of God. There's no way that I can do that. And Jesus has been trying to teach them again and again and again. Do you know what? You as an individual, you as an individual, you as an individual, no, you can't do that. But guess what? Together, you make up the body of Christ. You are together that same spirit which is within me. And when you get together, and when you pray together for one thing, when you go to God for one thing, then you'll find that extraordinary things happen. So when you're on the boat, the first thing you should do is get together and ask God, what do we do now? When you've got a whole load of people to feed and you've only got this amount of food, the first thing to do is not work out how you're going to run to the supermarket and pay for food for everybody. The first thing you need to do is go to God as a group and say, how do we do this? What do we do? Because together you have the same power, Jesus says, that I have. Which is why I'm quite happy just to sleep in the boat. because you have everything you need to stop this. And I'm quite happy to say you feed the crowds, because you have everything you need. You actually don't need me. You just need me to tell you that you can do this. And the reason why I'm walking past you when you're on the boat is because you can take care of it. You don't need me to come over there and do it for you. You have everything that you need. And very soon, you're not going to have me. And when I'm not around, you're going to find this out. But guess what? It's much easier if you work it out now while I'm here. Because you're going to have questions. We're going to have to sort things out. And it's much easier if you do it now. Of course they don't. They wait until Jesus is dead and gone. And then suddenly they realize that they can heal the same way that Jesus did. That they can do miracles the same way that Jesus did. One of the big lies that the church tells us, inadvertently, is you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not good enough to celebrate communion. You're not good enough to pray for your congregation. You're not good enough to expect God to step in for you. And Jesus says, actually, you are. Seriously, you are. And if you wonder why things don't happen on your own, it's why I called you together as a church. Because you need each other. And when something goes pear-shaped, you need each other in that situation, and you need to support one another, because when you do that, the same spirit that's in me is activated in you, and God moves and extraordinary things happen. And it's as simple as that. No, you are not super people, a super person, but together you are super people. Together you are something amazing. It's the lesson that Jesus tries to teach the disciples over and over again, even to the point where he gets angry at them and yells at them because they don't get it. It would be really ironic if 2,000 years later we didn't get it either. Amen.